The war over education has moved from classrooms to the streets, from parliament to the courts and now to the centre of India's political discourse. Leader of opposition Rahul Gandhi has thrown his full weight behind the ongoing student protests, calling Union Education Minister Dharmendra Pradhan corrupt and incompetent. Rahul Gandhi has demanded his resignation, saying the minister has become the symbol of everything that has gone wrong with public examination. Rahul Gandhi claims that in the last 10 years, India has witnessed 152 paper leaks, an average of one every month. According to him, crores of students have suffered while there has been little accountability.
What we do know is that 152 paper leaks have taken place over the last decade. If you do the math, so one a month. One a month, approximately. Every month, lakhs of students are told that all the stress that you went through, you're going to have to go through again. And after that, they're told, we really don't care.
He has also backed the students' demand for action over the alleged police crackdown on protesters in Delhi, saying those responsible must be held accountable.
The first demand, completely legitimate demand, is that Mr. Dharmendra Pradhan, who has failed as an education minister, who is known to be corrupt, should be relieved of his duties. Second demand, every single person who raised a finger on our students, and it doesn't matter who he is, the people who ordered it and the people who executed it should be made accountable. And the third thing is that the man who is running this entire system, the man who is finally accountable to all this, should have the decency to apologize to the students for what has happened.
Now the question is whether this will lead to another washout session or a constructive engagement in the House. Second aspect is whether the students' demand will get lost in the din of the narrative of mob violence versus genuine protest. And lastly, protests in India have become decoupled from the electoral results. Will this be any different? Will this be any different? And I'm joined by Zainab Sikandar, political analyst, K.V. Prasad, senior journalist, Arun Anand, author and a political analyst, and Brijesh Pandey, who joined me from studio, is the input editor of News9. Let me straight away go to Zainab. Thank you. My question to you is that if you look at the morphology of the protests in India, in last 5-6 years, they're actually decoupled from the electoral results. If you look at the farmers' protest, it didn't make a dent in the results of Haryana, didn't make any dent in the results the way they came out in Western UP. In fact, BJP swept there. So how do we look at these protests, before we get into what's genuine, what's not, what's proxy? Because generally protests and padyatras have an electoral outcome. In India, they have been decoupled. Your thoughts on that?
That's actually one of the best questions I've heard on these protests. That do protests really, on ground make a difference with the way people vote? And in my opinion, most of the protests that happened till now, especially the farmers' protests, I think why it didn't have an effect on the way people voted is because by the end of it, the farmer laws were repealed. And there was some sense within the farmers that at least we were heard. And there was so much infighting within the Congress in Haryana. And there was so much tussle between the leadership, that I think people in general thought that we would be wasting our vote if, and by the way, Congress also, had a good amount of voting, to themselves. But it's just that in Haryana, BJP just worked more swiftly, and then there were other alliance partners also, which had issues, and therefore, with the Chautalas and stuff. And that's why I think Haryana showed a different result. But the repealing of the farm laws also had an effect in the way people voted. And there is right now, a sort of an upstreak with the way people think about BJP, because they generally think that Congress is a lazy party. and therefore all the criticism that right now Rahul Gandhi is getting for sitting outside Lok Kalyan Marg in front of the Prime Minister's house, and they're calling him an immature leader, for doing such a security breach. I think there is no winning for Rahul Gandhi. If he wouldn't have done that, they would have said he's just giving lectures in an auditorium and he doesn't know how to do real politics on ground. And if he actually sits in front of the Prime Minister's office to make a big statement, sorry, Prime Minister's residence to make a big statement, then they're saying he's an immature leader and he doesn't respect security. So there's no winning for Congress that way. As far as the student protests are happening, now I'll tell you, there is a certain analogy which I think the central government is also making with the JNU protests. Okay, JNU per se in popular psyche is seen as a leftist university, where वो तो बच्चे हमेशा धरने पे ही बैठे रहते हैं. So people don't take them seriously. But in this case, the difference is that these are common man's children with no political ideology as such who are suffering. And when a child suffers, what you don't realize is the parents suffer, the family suffers. So if the child is feeling a bit jaded with concern to how the government is reacting to them, the apathy of the government, the indifference of the government, this utter silence which the central government thinks that it's their superpower, staying quiet and not answering and not falling for demands, not catering, not caving in for demands. This Modi government is particularly known for staying silent on important issues. So they think that they can tide over this student protest also, but they can't, because this student protest is very, although I know Cockroach Jantar Party was the starting point of it, but now it has become a people's protest, and there is no particular faction that is aligned with it. There is no particular ideology. It's just children. There are 7-year-old children
just
being brought
hold
today.
your thought for a minute. Generally what's happening in the last 15, 20 years, Arun, is most of the protests, when they say that they're apolitical in nature, the demand is extremely political. For example, the Gen Z protest that took place in Nepal, they said it's an apolitical protest, but the entire repercussion of the protest was that the traditional politicians and the parties got displaced. Look at the Gen Z sort of protest which took place in Sri Lanka. Though they had respect for the constitutional order, unlike what happened in Nepal, where the leaders got targeted, but it led to displacement of a Rajapaksa family. So my question is that how do we frame this protest? Are we framing it from the narrative of security? Are we framing it from a hindsight, which is India against corruption and the gentleman turned out to be a suave politician? How do we frame this? And most important of all, in the midst of what is being done, are we losing the larger message that the students genuinely want an educational reform in this country? I have laced three things together, I know. I have laced three things together, Arun.
No, I think it's difficult to frame this thing, this protest in a particular, straight-jacketed thing. It started. No, it's a very interesting thing. It started with a comment of Chief Justice of India, and then this party came into existence. See, all the political leaders have now what I call graced the stage of, all the political leaders in the opposition have graced the stage of this protest. It is no more apolitical. The biggest strength of this protest when it started was that it was positioned as an apolitical movement, which is questioning certain governance related issues, especially in the education sector. So this was primarily the strength of this movement. But now that strength has waned away because it has become a purely political movement. The political parties in the opposition, they have jumped on this bandwagon and they have, kind of hijacked it. And there's nothing wrong in it. This is the way politics is done. I'm not going into the merits or demerits of whether what they're doing is right or wrong. So one is that. Second is that while my fellow panelist was speaking at about that this is about purely about children. So simultaneously on your screen, certain visuals were running in which heavy stone pelting was happening. These innocent children. So they were targeting the public property, and we have also seen, while there was a kind of a strong lathi charge, but right now also I can see the visuals on your screen simultaneously which are happening. So we need to ask this. I'm not passing judgment. Are these, these innocent children who want educational reforms? Is this the way to basically demand it? Of course, and you have gone to the even, the government. I'm not saying everything that government is doing is right, but every government has its way of basically responding to the things. It is not necessary that anytime a protest happens, the government will immediately respond to it. I'm not the government spokesperson, but
Okay.
they have sent people to talk to, and you see the blatant lie which these guys are. See their leadership, this Abhijit Deepke and this Saurav Das. So they are blatant liars. It raises they are saying that their phones were, the representatives which they sent to talk to JP Nadda in the government. So their phones were kept away. And there are, the pictures which have come out. So their phones are in their hand. So it's, and their last thing I want to say is they are absolutely changing the goalposts. It started with the educational reform thing, and now you see they are abusing Indian Army. They are, targeting public property. The kind of ruckus which they have created, the kind of slogans. I don't want to go into that. They
Okay.
themselves have turned it into basically, so it's sad. It's a missed opportunity. It could have been a better, it was a good opportunity to, raise an issue of educational reform, but I think it's a missed
You're
opportunity.
saying it's a missed opportunity. Mr. Prasad, but are we missing the larger picture that Neet has become an issue and Mr. Pradhan has not responded as a minister as forcefully, powerfully as he should have in terms of having a conversation with students, and he has left it for other senior ministers to do the job for him?
No, no, I think, Karthike, if I'm not mistaken, there was a longish post on Platform X by the minister himself, talking about when commenting upon the action of Mr. Rahul Gandhi and anything else. So I think the question is not just Mr. Pradhan himself. Of course, he can take credit, the government can take credit, the retest was done in a fairly good manner and all that, that's fine. But the first misery that struck remained unaddressed to a large extent. The fact remains these people were sitting in a peaceful protest till the day before at Jantar Mantar. We didn't hear, at least there was no public conversation about any reach out from the government or anybody, any emissary trying to understand what was exactly. So probably the government said, "ठीक है, बैठे रहे तो देखी जाएगी" types. I don't know. I have no idea because we only did not read many reports. The question is, these are students who belong to India. It is not an organized political party per se, because by the very declaration they have said we are not a political movement. And yesterday, I think the poll you had mentioned in your show shows that not many people even consider Mr. Deepke as their leader. They are there for a cause, they say, right? So when we are getting these mixed signals from the ground, of course, the government has to engage with its own people. If there are issues, if not, you don't have to say at the top, but there are always mechanisms in which these are addressed. Every political party will try and stir the political cauldron when it is available. I mean, when Anna Hazare movement was happening, you saw people in parties in the opposition also joined or started conversations. So that's the nature of politics. We understand that, but how do you keep it apolitical? The farmers' protest did not allow any political leaders to occupy the munch. What most political leaders landed either was post the police action. If you see the number of leaders who reached there were a few leaders who went before, met Sonam Wangchuk and all that. So I think there are many shades emerging from it, and the kind of response post Monday police action, because now people are questioning: was it in proportion? Was it highly? I mean, okay, and I have covered many demonstrations in Parliament Street between 92 and 96 personally, and I know how these things happen. And even in those days, the police have spotters who identify miscreants and profile them properly. Among they are very well trained people, and nowadays we are using AI. So I don't. And if there are instances, violence is totally unacceptable. But there are technology. I mean, police is now AI platforms are available every time in every crowded place. So I know that they are called as spotters.